welcome everyone. Welcome to the grand finale of our summer grant writing, NIH grant writing workshop series. A couple of people have asked, and for those of you that haven't asked, we do indeed have the recordings of the first two webinars and the PowerPoints, and we will post them on the website. And everyone who registered for these workshops will get the links. So don't worry about that. We will definitely send those to you. So this is the third, as I mentioned, with Dr. Michelle Kiley, who is the Associate Dean of Research at the CUNY School of Public Health, where she started in 2014. The first one was about, for those of you that weren't part of these, was about more sort of generally the overview, what you should know about the NIH and your specific aims. Last week was much sort of strategically your research strategy, how to approach the RFP, how to write. And then today, Dr. Kiley is going to wrap up with what she's calling bits and pieces, and just the various pieces of, such as, you're going to talk about budget a little bit today, like all the things that you sort of, think about at the end, but you can definitely improve upon and make better for your submission. So I'm just, Dr. Kiley is a professor of epidemiology and biostatistics, and as I mentioned, she joined CUNY in 2014, but she has an extensive background working in federal and government agencies. She worked at the NIH for a long time, and also the Office of the United States Surgeon General. And the Health Resources and Services Administration, and she also worked with the state of New York. So she has a great deal of experience in this space, and we welcome her to share her wisdom with all of us. Thank you, Michelle. Please take it away.
Okay, I'm going to turn off my video so as not to distract myself and you guys.
Okay.
Okay, so this is called Bits and Pieces, which includes budget, biosketches, abstract facilities, and the title. And then we'll talk a little bit about the review process. As someone said to me, they hated the bits and pieces, but really you should take every opportunity to improve your chances. All of the bits and pieces of your grant, the budget, the biosketches, the human subjects, facilities, abstract, and even your title, are opportunities that you shouldn't pass up because they can increase your competitiveness. They can't do it by themselves, but they can help you. Come on down. Oh. All right, sorry about that.
You maybe need to restart it.
Yeah.
I've noticed that sometimes things get a little sticky when you're in the share screen mode in Zoom.
There we go.
go.
So I'm only going to talk very briefly about budgets. Mostly this should be handled by your grants office, but I think it's useful to at least understand about budgets, because remember, if you get funded, you have to manage your budget. Carefully read the funding opportunity for budget criteria. Make sure you know your budget limitations of the mechanism for which you are applying. All the costs charged to the award must be allowable, allocatable, reasonable, necessary, and consistently applied. And this is true regardless of the source of funds. Your relevant FOA sections include the mechanism of support, funds available, cost sharing or matching, and funding restrictions. I know a lot of people pad their budgets in anticipation of NIH doing an across-the-board budget cut, which can happen. It absolutely can. But I still believe the best strategy is to request a reasonable amount of money to do the work, not more and not less. And a sure sign that someone doesn't know what they're doing is when they under budget a project. Don't think that if you're offering up a large amount of work for a small amount of money, NIH will say, oh, what a great idea, because you're actually gonna have to do it if you get funded. NIH applications will include either the R&R budget form or the PHS 398 modular budget form, but not both. Although you should double check the funding announcement about which budget form to use, in the list of websites in NIH's decision tree about which form to use. If you are applying for less than $250,000 per year in direct costs, you must use the modular budget form. What is crucial is that your budget matches the activities you describe in your approach. Again, that's crucial. And I believe that even if you're submitting a modular budget, it's helpful to create a detailed budget for your own use. While creating the modular budget form is simple, it has much less detail. And this means that your budget justification has to do the heavy lifting. Using the prompts from the detailed budget instructions to help you figure out what your direct costs are. And wherever possible, name personnel, particularly for short projects you want to avoid to be determined in the personnel file. We all know it takes a long time to hire people, and once your time clock starts, you're not going to have enough time to really hire people. Piece of advice: after you've completed your budget, it's time to do one more feasibility check. Can you realistically complete your project on time and on budget during the term of the award? Will you have access to the right equipment, resources, and expertise? Did you include what you don't already have in your budget? Double check the FOA to make sure that your budget fits the criteria and the limits or allowable costs. And once again, your grants office should help you do all of this. So biosketches. Biosketches are one of the key ways reviewers assess the investigators. This may seem obvious, but you must include biosketches for all the senior or key personnel and other significant contributors. The NIH's definition of other significant contributors is individuals who have committed to contribute to the scientific development or execution of the project, but are not committing any specified measurable effort, that is person months, to the project. These individuals are typically presented at effort of 0 person months or as needed. Individuals with measurable effort may not be listed as other significant contributors, and consultants should be included if they meet this definition. Note that for applications or RPPRs due on or after January, oh, sorry, I didn't change this slide. I will do that before I give it to you, Effie. On or after January 25th, 2022, the Biosketch has changed slightly. We'll talk more about that in a bit. It was originally May 25th and they pushed it off to January.
Okay, thank you.
It's important to think about scoring criteria for the investigators. Are the PIs, collaborators, and other researchers well suited to the project? If early stage investigators are those in early stages of independent careers, do they have the appropriate experience and training? If established, have they demonstrated an ongoing record of accomplishments that have advanced their fields? If the project is collaborative or multi-PI, do the investigators have complementary and integrated expertise? Are their leadership approach, governance, and organizational structure appropriate for this project? This is an important piece of advice that you should take seriously. Many applicants recycle their biosketch without making enough changes to the personal statement and contributions to science section to demonstrate why their unique expertise is needed on this specific project. Don't use a generic version of your biosketch. Let me repeat, don't use the generic version of your biosketch. Also, make sure key personnel and other significant contributors are tailoring their biosketch to your project. People's default is to use their generic biosketch. Taking the time to tailor it to your specific project puts you ahead of other applicants. The link to the science CV is in the handouts. Use the Science CV tool to create your 5-page biosketch. We'll focus on the places in the biosketch that can help you make gains in the reviewer's assessment of you. In thinking about your personal statement that goes in the biosketch, briefly describe why you are well suited for your role in this project. Factors you may want to include are your training, your previous work on this specific or related topics, your technical expertise, your collaborators or scientific environment, and or your past performance in this or related fields. Think about why you in particular need to be on this project. Each person contributing a biosketch must explain their unique role and responsibilities on the team based on their expertise. Here we're going to focus on how to write your personal statement. Each person's role on the project should be unique. Remember that your training, background, or technical expertise that makes you the right person for your role. In your previous experimental work and or past performance speaks to your experience in the field. If you have one, include a description of any interruptions in productivity as well as why. You can list up to 4 publications at the end of your personal statement, but they must be published or in press. You're allowed to cite interim research projects. If you're an early stage investigator, point this out in your personal statement. In picking publications, choose ones that bolster your argument that you are the right person in the role, ones that point to your technical expertise or relevant experience. In the final sentence of your personal statement, introduce those publications by explaining what they are. The publications listed below attest to my experience or expertise with previous experimental work. Be explicit. Remember that you want to lead your reviewers. In writing your contributions to science, briefly describe up to 5 of your most significant contributions to science. The description of each contribution should be no longer than half a page, including citations. For each contribution, include the historical background that frames the scientific problem, the central findings, the influence of the findings on the progress of science or the application of those findings to health or technology, and your specific role in the described work. For each contribution, as I said before, you may cite up to 4 publications or research products that are relevant to your contribution. If you are not the author, indicate what your role or contribution. Note that you may mention manuscripts that have not yet been accepted for publication as part of your contribution, but you can only cite published papers to support the contribution. You may want to include a full list of your published work. You do this by including the URL to that list. The caveat is that the URL must be to a federal government website. That is, that it has a .gov suffix. NIH recommends using my bibliography, and the link is in the handouts. While it isn't required, I strongly recommend that you do this. So advice, even if all you and your other key personnel do with your biosketch is to follow the NIH instructions, you'll be miles ahead of most applicants in terms of your competitiveness of your contributions to science, since what most people will do is default to their generic biosketch. Another piece of advice. Many applicants use the contributions to science section as a chronology of their career without following the recommended structure. The result is it becomes more like a biography than a contribution. If you follow the recommended structure, you can demonstrate your career trajectory and its impact. For each contribution, use a title that summarizes the contribution you made by focusing on the impact of the contribution, not the area of study or the process you used. For example, discovered, established, improved, identified. This will enhance your competitiveness and make it clear what the contribution is. Continue with the historical background that frames the scientific problem, the central findings, the influence of the findings on the progress of science, or the application of those findings to health or technology, and your specific role in the work. Use references that are relevant to your contribution. After you've completed all your contributions, include a link to your full list of publications using My Bibliography. And again, the link to that is in the handouts. In the section on research support, include all types here that are ongoing and from the last 3 years. Do not include pending support. If you need to be selective about what to include, focus on the grants that bolster your argument that you have the right experience or expertise for this project. When you're an early stage investigator, you can include startup funds because this indicates institutional support. So if you're leading a team of people and you need their biosketches, you have 2 options. You can write them all yourself, or you can guide them on how to write a great biosketch. If the team members will follow the advice I've outlined here and do it, having them write their biosketch is less work for you. On the other hand, if what they're going to do is hand you a generic biosketch, it is in your best interest to write it yourself. When you are writing all the biosketches yourself, ask team members for a current CV and a recent biosketch. Revise the personal statement and contribution to science to make sure they align with the current project. Once you have it drafted, return it to the team member for revision or approval. If team members are writing their own biosketch, give them instructions and an early deadline. Harmonize them and make sure they're all in the same font. It's a simple thing, but it helps give a sense that you are a team working together. Make sure that taken together, the biosketches give a full picture of the team and their expertise. If you have revised them, send the draft back to team members for revision or approval. Now that I've told you about biosketches, this is another slide that I didn't change. I have to add that for applications submitted on or after January 25th, biosketches are going to change slightly. NIH has updated the personal statement instructions and positions, scientific appointments, and honors instructions. And I will tell you that if you go to the NIH website, and this really doesn't make sense to me, they say start using the new form, but you have to give us all the information we want with the old form. So I think if I were doing this up until January 25th, I would just use the old form and be done with it. So this table summarizes this round of changes to the biosketch. On the biographical sketch format page, Section B, Positions and Honors, has been renamed Positions, Scientific Appointments, and Honors. For the non-fellowship biosketch, Section D has been removed. For the research fellowship biosketch, Section D has been updated to remove research support. As applicable, all applicants may include details on ongoing and completed research projects from the past 3 years that they want to draw attention to within the personal statement. Section A. For the non-fellowship biosketch, Section D has been removed. For the that's actually, I said that. So for the other support format page, the format page is being reorganized to separate funded projects from in-kind contributions. The signature block added for program director, principal investigator, or other senior key personnel to certify the accuracy of the information submitted. Each person must electronically sign their respective other support forms as a PDF prior to submission. So for the next 2 slides, the specific changes are in bold italics. For your personal statement, briefly describe why you are well suited for your roles in the project. Relevant factors may include aspects of your training, your previous experimental work on this specific topic or related topics, your technical expertise, your collaborators or scientific environment, and or your past performance in this or related fields. This is the new part, including ongoing and completed research projects from the past 3 years that you want to draw attention to, previously known as research support. For positions, scientific appointments, that's new, and honors, list in reverse chronological order. This is new. All positions and scientific appointments, both domestic and foreign, including affiliations with foreign entities or governments. This includes titled academic, professional, or institutional appointments, whether or not remuneration is received, and whether full-time, part-time, or voluntary, including adjunct, visiting, or honorary. High school students and undergraduates may include any previous positions. For individuals who are not currently located at the applicant organization, include the expected position at the applicant organization and the expected start date. Again, these changes become effective on January 25th, 2022. So now we're going to talk about human subjects. Here are the sections that we are focusing on when we discuss human subjects, and they are from the application guide, the R220, R&R other project information, the R230, project performance site locations form, R500, human subjects and clinical trials information. This is a warning. Parts of this portion may not be applicable to your project. Please double check the application guide to make sure you're including all the required components that are relevant to your project. So this is a flow chart. This is pulled from the NIH website to help you decide if your project is considered human subject research. And the link to it is in the handouts. This is just the top of the flow chart. And while it's too big to put on the slide, there is a link in the useful websites handout called Research Involving Private Information or Biospecimens. And my recommendation is you look at it as noted at the bottom of the flow chart. The intention of this document is as resource only, but this is sort of, when you get there, you'll know this is what it looks like. Back to the R220. The instructions tell you if activities involving human subjects are planned at any time during the proposed project at any performance site, check yes. Check yes, even if the proposed project is exempt from regulations for the protection of human subjects, or if activities involving human subjects are anticipated within the period of the award, but plans are indefinite. There are more details in the 424 instructions, but I wanted to highlight that for you. Answering yes to are human subjects involved will populate the R500 human subjects and clinical trials information form. And this is what the R500 is what we'll focus on for the next few slides. Here's a warning for you. Go back to your FOA before completing this form and make sure that your application meets all the IC specific criteria. There's a section in the FOA called Award Information, and there it will indicate whether clinical trials are or are not allowed and whether clinical trial research experience is or is not allowed. That will determine how to use these instructions and subsequently how to fill out this form. Those instructions are directly from the application guide. Make sure you go back to the FOA, and if the clinical trials aspect is relevant to you, follow the instructions. It used to be, this is something sort of relatively new where they decide whether or not they will accept clinical trials for an application. If you answered no to the question, are human subjects involved on the R220, answer the following questions about the use of human specimens and or human data. So that doesn't get you totally off the hook. So there are some more questions to answer. And the first one is, does the proposed research involve human specimens and or data? So there are instructions if that is relevant to you. If you answered yes to does the proposed research involve human specimens and or data, You must provide a justification for your claim that no human subjects are involved.
Michelle, could you provide an example of that? So what would be, so if you're not doing clinical trials and you're not working directly with humans, but it does involve data or subjects, like what would be an example of that? Do you know what I mean?
Well, there are data like specimen biobanks
Oh,
that
right.
have data, and they may or may not be de-identified.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. If you answered yes to the question, are human subjects involved on the R220, R&R other project information, add a study record for each proposed study involving human subjects by selecting add new study or add new delayed onset study as appropriate. Let's talk about the study record and what you need to accomplish there. What is a study record? It's a set of data elements about research investigation involving human subjects that describes a proposed or ongoing study, most commonly used in the context of PHS human subjects and clinical trials information form. Note that for the purpose of the initial application, NIH supports grouping studies that use the same human subjects population and same research protocols, same research procedures, and the same human subjects population into a single study record to the extent that the information provided is accurate and understandable to NIH staff and reviewers. This is a way to figure out how many study records you need to include. So here's how you add a study record and what you need to include. Follow the prompts to answer each question, to answer questions in each of the 5 sections of the study record: basic information, study population characteristics, protection and monitoring plans, protocol synopsis, other clinical trial related attachments. Advice. This is where you really want to focus on, where you provide detailed information about the eligibility criteria for your study: age limits, inclusion of women, minorities, and children, and recruitment and retention. This means that you don't have to include this information in the research strategy, at least to the same level of detail. Go back to your research strategy and remove any information about human subject research that wouldn't be considered big picture. You have an opportunity in the study records to include all that detailed information. Think research strategy, high level and fairly conceptual, and study record for much of the detail. So the project abstract. The project summary or abstract is a succinct and accurate description of the proposed work and should be able to stand on its own, separate from the application. This section should be informative to other persons working in the same or related fields and understandable to a scientifically literate reader. Avoid both descriptions of past accomplishments and the use of the first person. Be concise. You only have 30 lines of text. Use a 1 sentence to describe the problem, gap, and hook. You can use an extra sentence if necessary to describe what we know before you get to the gap. And if you weren't in the first session, if you go back to the first session, I talked about the problem, gap, hook as a tool to structure your proposal. This is a standalone document, so it's okay to be repetitive. Cut and paste from your specific aims page in the following order: long-term goal, project objective, central hypothesis if applicable, specific aims without the working hypotheses, justification for your central hypothesis if applicable, and summary of your research design and methods for each aim. Summarize from your innovation section the main or key reasons that your project is innovative. Cut and paste and or summarize from your specific aims page the expected outcomes of the project and their anticipated impact. If there is space, describe the health relatedness of the project and how it ties to the IC's mission. So the project narrative is a 3-sentence maximum. Be very clear and explicit by stating, this project is relevant to public health because. Note that this isn't the place to be creative. Include a statement that links your project's expected outcomes to the mission of your target IC. And as an example, the proposed research is relevant to the mission of NIDDK to support medical research on diabetes and other endocrine and metabolic diseases by identifying whatever. So your facilities and resources. Your grants office should have a facilities and resources document. My recommendation is that you don't just cut and paste the information. Think of it as a starting point. You may want to supplement it because it isn't just your school that provides what you bring to the project. If you work with a center or institute, you want to include that. Use this section to enhance the cohesiveness and overall competitiveness of your application and give reviewers a reason to award you a good score on the environmental criterion. Use this section to show not only that you have everything you need to execute this project, but how well the school is supporting you to be successful. Think about that, particularly if you're an early stage investigator. As I have said before, it's always helpful to think about the scoring criteria when you write. So let's go through the scoring criteria for environment. Will the scientific environment in which the work will be done contribute to the probability of success? Are the institutional support, equipment, and other physical resources available to the investigators adequate for the proposed project? Will the project benefit from the unique features of the scientific environment, subject population, or collaborative arrangements? Describe how the scientific environment in which the research will be done contributes to the probability of success. Think institutional support, physical resources, and intellectual support. In describing the scientific environment in which the work will be done, discuss ways in which the proposed studies will benefit from the unique features of the scientific environment or from unique subject populations, or how studies will employ useful collaborative arrangements. If there are multiple performance sites, describe the resources available at each site. Describe special facilities used for working with biohazards and any other potentially dangerous substances. Note, information about select agents must be described in the research plan, select agents research. For early stage investigators, describe institutional investment in the success of your investigator. See NIH's policy on early stage investigators. It's crucial in this section to provide detailed information that is specific to your application. In other words, describe only the facilities and environments that support the activities you're carrying out in your project. Advice. Use this section to show reviewers everything is lining up for you. Organize your facilities and environment attachment by study location, then divide it according to the criteria listed in the instructions. So choosing the right title. You may think that 2 whole slides on choosing the right title is silly, but it's another opportunity to enhance the competitiveness of your application. Your title is more important than you think because it is often used to assign your application to a study section. Your title should focus on the product of your research. When making a decision about the title, consider the main objective from the specific aims page. You want your title to be compelling and strategic. Review your project's overall objective and expected outcome. What is the end result or outcome of your research? If you can incorporate any relevant keywords describing your preferred study section and funding IC in your title, that would be a win. If you're responding to anything other than a parent announcement, check the FOA for keywords related to the objective of the funding opportunity. Literally, think about this as sucking up to reviewers. Don't hesitate to do everything you can to improve your competitiveness. Now that you've written your proposal, do an internal review. Think about it this way: learning to assess your own application is one of the most important skills to develop as a grant writer. It can be very challenging, especially when you're completely immersed in the application. That's why I always step away from when I'm writing. Stepping away is crucial. When you're creating a planning timeline, be sure to include time to step away and clear your mind of what you have written. Honestly, I do this with almost everything I write. Taking time away from it allows you to view it more critically. Ask yourself the same questions you ask of others on concept, merit, and writing. And if you have enough people, I think sort of spreading out the can you review this to people for different parts of your grant, not parts of the grant in terms of the specific aims or the research strategy, but like things like, how is the writing? Does my study, do the expected outcomes of my study match my objectives and aims? Can I meet my objective with the aims I've listed? How well have I described the need for this study? How strong is my conceptual framework? In asking for feedback on scientific and technical merit, ask how well justified is my central hypothesis? How clear are my aims? How rigorous is my experimental design? How feasible do you think this is given the study timeline? Is the detail I've provided for each aim meaningful? Have I thought of all the pitfalls and provided suitable mitigation strategies? Have I accurately described the expected outcomes and their impact? When asking for feedback on writing, how clearly have I defined the problem I'm trying to solve? How clearly have I justified the gap in knowledge or thinking? How clearly have I described the previous work done in this area, including your preliminary data? How clearly have I conveyed the expertise and experience of the study team? How convinced are you that this study is significant and impressive? And B, is it feasible? How well have I responded to the scoring criteria? And in the handouts, there's some advice about writing. And I will tell you that I think it's really important to write in active voice. And when you write in active voice, you tend to also include first person. You can also do it if you don't like writing if you think, because we were all taught not to write in first person in these sorts of activities, use third person, the research team, but keep it in active voice. Finding the holes in your application to look for places where reviewers might get stuck, tripped up, or where they might disagree with you. Your job is to justify the project you've designed, so make sure reviewers understand why you're doing it the way you are. So now we're going to talk about the review. Who reviews your application? The Center for Scientific Review, or CSR, reviews your application for administrative and formatting requirements, and it also assigns the application to an institute or center and a review group. For investigator-initiated R01s, R21s, and R03s applications, the institute and review group assignments are based on the science proposed in your application. If you included an assignment request with your application using the PHS assignment request form, NIH staff will consider that. For applications in response to an initiative such as an IC request for applications, an RFA, applications would all be assigned to that IC, which may establish one or more funding opportunity-specific special emphasis panels. CSR or the Institute may convene a special emphasis panel. For applications in response to program announcements, including parent announcements and most notices of special interest, the most appropriate study section in CSR will conduct the initial peer review. Potentially, many integrated review groups could review your applications responding to a single program announcement. For RFAs in which multiple NIH institutes are participating, The lead sponsoring institute usually conducts the review. So CSR has 180 standing review panels, and the NIH website lists standing review panel members. Each standing review panel has its own scientific review officer. And although there's a standard list, people's availability varies, so panels aren't always the same. And meeting rosters are provided for information purposes only. Applicant investigators and institutional officials, meaning at CUNY, must not, and I repeat, not communicate directly with study section members about an application before or after the review. Failure to observe this policy will create a serious breach of integrity in the peer review process and may lead to actions including removal of the application from immediate review. Within 7 to 10 days after you apply, you should find your initial assignment information in ERA Commons. If you apply to a program announcement, the application might go to CSR or to an institute. A special emphasis panel is likely to review your application. This means in the PHS assignment request form, focus on describing the scientific expertise necessary to review your application. CSR often complies with assignment requests, but is not required to do so. And CAS may make different assignments based on NIH referral guidelines and workloads. So the assignment request form itself and all the fields shown in it are optional. It's not a separate attachment, so find the form as part of the application. You can choose the PHS assignment request form for any of the following purposes. List up to 5 areas of expertise needed to understand and review your application. Completing this section is a good idea, even if you decide not to use other parts of the form. Highlight disciplines involved, particularly if multidisciplinary, to help the CSR assign your application and to ensure the appropriate expertise in the panel. You can use the form to exclude reviewers. NIH policy allows you to list people who should not review your application, though the scientific review officer gets to make the final call. Limit your response to 1,000 characters. Valid reasons for excluding reviewers include a competitor, if you believe the competitor would not give you a fair review, a long-standing scientific disagreement, and a conflict of interest. Request assignment from CSR to a study section and institute. Requesting assignment is appropriate only for investigator-initiated R01, R21, and R03 applications. And here's why you should take the time to make this request and ensure the best match. Back up. Having your application assigned to an institute that is enthusiastic about your research may improve your chances of funding. And study section, we advise you to request a study section after carefully researching groups that are likely to be scientifically appropriate for your application. CSR, scientific review officers, assign primary and secondary reviewers, plus at least 1 reader to each application. Scientific review officers may also ask other members to serve as readers. Special review panels have a variable number of reviewers with at least 3 reviewers assigned to each application. Special review panels recruit reviewers de novo for each special emphasis panel. And reviewer assignments are based on their expertise. Approximately 30 days before the review meeting, your study section's updated roster will appear in ERA Commons. You can request a change of review panel, but it must be made on scientific grounds. So it's acceptable to say, the emphasis of the assigned study section appears to be focused on X. Since my application proposes Y, the expertise of reviewers in study section Z is critical to appreciate the approaches I have taken. Not acceptable. I don't want these reviewers, but I want those instead. And remember, if you think you see somebody you know on a review panel, they're likely going to recuse themselves from your review. NIH streamlines applications to focus on the ones that are highly meritorious and may be in the fundable range. Streamlined or not discussed applications are ones that reviewers consider not competitive. Streamlined applications do not receive an overall impact score, and streamlined applications receive a summary statement with reviewers' critiques. CSR study sections do not review approximately the bottom half of applications, and all reviewers must agree unanimously to not discuss the remaining applications. And any unconflicted reviewer may rescue an application for discussion. The number of discussed applications varies by study section and the number of types of applications received. Non-competitive applications are not reviewed because it isn't an effective use of reviewers' time. Your score reflects the reviewer's judgment of the extent to which your project can make an impact. The definition of impact is the likelihood that your project will exert a powerful influence on its field. Also, it's relevant to NIH's mission, improving human health through science. An application does not need to be strong in all review criteria to get an outstanding overall impact score, although all the criteria can affect your score. To arrive at your overall impact score, reviewers consider the core review criteria: significance, investigator, innovation, approach, environment. Reviewers use significance and innovation to assess the project's importance. Reviewers use approach, investigator, and environment to assess the likelihood of success, its feasibility. Reviewers, particularly your assigned reviewers, look to your research strategy for the most detailed information on significance, innovation, and approach. Reviewers mostly read your Biosketch and resources section to gauge the investigator and environment criteria. And the overall impact score reflects all the criteria, but is not a mathematical sum. So, piece of advice: your ideal application, to some extent, reviewers judge your application based on their ideal of an outstanding application in your field. Usage varies. Adherence to the criteria varies by committee. Remember that all of the reviewers are human and everybody's slightly different. Weight varies. Though all review criteria can affect your score, an application does not need to be strong in all of them to get an outstanding score. And we talked about this in the first time, but really don't forget about the RF's pre-proposal award system. It's called RF CUNY apps. They will give you a really high quality NIH style review in about a month. If you're waiting for NIH to do it, it will take you 9 months.
Michelle, you had mentioned in the previous slide that you said some of the reviewers will judge your proposal based on their concept of what the ideal application is in your field.
Yeah.
Now, I think you'd mentioned this, was it in the first session? You said that you can see previous applications on the NIH site, right?
You can see successful applications on the NIAID. They have a whole application library of all the different mechanisms. And the handout has a link to those.
Okay, that's good. So that would be a good source for trying to figure out what the ideal application is, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, but you know, the problem is all successful applications look different. And so it's always harder than you think to sort of do that.
Yeah.
So we're almost done.
Okay.
A final quote: no amount of grantsmanship will turn a bad idea into a fundable one, but there are many outstanding ideas that are camouflaged by poor grantsmanship. And that is it. Thank you. So stop share and
Great. We actually have one. Clara has a question in the chat. She said, if the PHS assignment request form is optional, is it recommended to complete?
Yes. Even if you don't complete all of it. Yes, I do recommend that you complete it.
Okay. Are there any other questions? We're a pretty small group, so if anyone has any questions, you could just unmute yourself. Oh, Prabal, do you have a question?
Yes. First of all, this has been really like phenomenal presentation. I've been to like at least 3 or 4 of these over the years, and this is by far the most detailed and most helpful. Granted, like with my own like failure and success, I have learned a little more over the years. But some of the minor points, like for instance, the facilities,
Thank
even with
you.
my
That's very
collaboration with
sweet.
even with my collaborations with more far more established PIs who have had several grants on their own, we have, honestly speaking, mostly cut and paste. So, which I mean, I didn't do on because I was like a junior co-PI, but and they've been grants and get funded. Anyway, so my question is, this is a more general question, which has bothered me over the years. Unlike journal submissions, these submissions are not anonymous, right?
Correct.
So how can someone make sure that when I understand that there is some value to, particularly for bigger grants, there is some value to understanding whether the PI has like the capability to carry out the project. But to me, it also creates bias towards more established and more like both more established
No,
researchers and more established departments, and that is reflected in the data overwhelmingly. So I thought there is some value of like anonymously judging a project by its own merits and not by who have made the submission.
Yeah, well, I mean, you might want to suggest that to NIH because that's totally out of my control. I mean, I will tell you that one of my faculty who sits on a lot of NIAID's review panel says that although technically they're not supposed to do this, that if you are junior and submit an R01 without having had smaller grants to start, you are not likely to get it funded, which is different than it used to be. I mean, my husband wrote an R01 when he was a graduate student that was funded.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard sort of across the board from many of our faculty that sit on review panels for NIH, NSF, that it is becoming much more competitive. I mean, even like over the last year or so, that they've seen like it's becoming more competitive.
Although the funding rate was higher this year than it was last year. I mean, in 2020 compared to 2019. That's why I really highly recommend people using the RF's pre-proposal review. I mean, everybody I know who's used it has raved about the quality of the review.
Yeah, I'll put the link into that again in the chat.
It's also in the handouts.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So John, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, a quick follow-up question, but that is, so I had to miss last week because there was a parallel session for Baruch. Where can I find the recording for the last week?
I was just about to type this in the chat. So our website's going through a bit of a transition, so we don't know quite where we're uploading yet, but we do have the recordings from the last 2 sessions. We have the handouts. We'll get the recording today. We'll download it. We have a YouTube channel. We'll upload them to YouTube and make them all available in our chat, and we will email all the registrants to these webinars, the links. So you will be able to have these and distribute these to your colleagues or peers too. But these will all be available on our website.
Thank you so much.
So I actually had a question, Michelle, and I don't know if, you might not know this. I was sort of curious about the changes to the Biosketch format, and you'd said that they had changed it so you have to include all your appointments, both international and foreign, and national and stuff. And I was just, again, you might not know this, but I was just curious.
I can already tell you I don't know the answer.
Oh, okay. I mean, I was just wondering if it was sort of the globalization of academia in general, or whether there was some sort of like weird conflict of interest thing. Is sort of what I was wondering.
No clue. I have no clue. And I will, if you want, I can try and ask around for the people I know who are still at NIH.
No, I mean, I just know that this has been a huge issue, for obvious reasons over the last few years in the compliance world and the conflict of interest world about, being careful about international collaborations. That was what I was thinking about, sort of what is.
I have no idea. I have no idea what motivated any of their changes.
All right. Well, it's just about 12 o'clock. If, as I said, anyone feel free to unmute yourself if they have a question or type it in the chat. Otherwise, if you registered with this webinar, which I'm assuming you did because you have the link, everyone that's registered, we will direct you. We will give you all the presentations and all the webinar videos. We'll make those available to you. And also, Michelle has very graciously offered if you have any questions directly for her. And do reach out also to, I was just saying, John Sapogis and Ingrid Valentine are the people that run the Office of Pre-Award Support in the RF, and they are also very responsive to faculty when they reach out to them.
Dima, I do that for my faculty. I really don't want to be volunteering to do that for all of CUNY. That's what, use the RF for that.
Yeah, definitely use the RF. They actually endeavor to, I think they have a fairly sizable pool of faculty of reviewers that they reach out to look at these. Many of them are external to CUNY too, both internal and external. So you'll get input from feedback from other institutions, not just from your colleagues. So definitely use if you have the time. I mean, again, to faculty, the only downside of using the RF system is that you have to get your proposal to them, I think, 2 months in advance. So you have to be well along in your writing and thinking on this. So that's the only.
Allow plenty of time in your writing. Make a timeline before you start that allows time for
that. Great. And also, again, I will also say, and Dima, I don't know which college you're at. There are varying levels of staffing and resources in the sponsored research office at your college too. And I would definitely reach out to them in addition to reaching out to the RF, because there might be mentoring opportunities among funded faculty on your campus, because your grants officer, your sponsored research office will know the faculty on your campus that are NIH funded. So definitely don't hesitate to pursue that. And if not, if you have any problem reaching out to your grants officer on your campus, I can also help facilitate that. Well, great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending in the doldrums of summer. And good luck with your grant writing. And don't hesitate to reach out to either our office, the Office of Research, or maybe reach out to us first, and then you can reach out to Dr. Kiley. Thank you so much. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.